You should be sure how to recognize a cardiac arrest and initiate the basic life support, to perform a high quality CPR and use of AED. AED is automated external defibrillator. And there are certain changes that are done in pediatric patient, in pregnant patient, in drowning and in trauma cases. Okay. So first of all, what is this basic life support? It is nothing but a set of immediate essential life-saving interventions that are performed for a person in a life-threatening emergency until more advanced care is available. What are those life-threatening emergencies? These are cardiac arrest, respiratory arrest, or if there is any airway obstruction. Now, who can provide BLS? Anyone? Any idea? Okay, any healthcare professional, we doctors, sisters, paramedical staff, and anyone who knows how to do it, where to do it. Okay? So, first of all, we should understand the chain of survival. What are those? Early recognition and call for help, early CPR, early defibrillation, advanced life support, post-arrest care and recovery. These are the few steps of chain of survival. Now, as I am a physician, I am going to deal with the adult BLS. The pediatric parts will be dealt by someone else. So, first of all, first step is to ensure the scene safety. Then you have to check for the responsiveness. Then call for help and activate the emergency medical services. Check breathing and pulse, start CPR, then attach AED and follow prompts. I shall be describing each of the steps. And the most important thing is, what is the purpose of this CPR? It is to maintain the circulation and oxygenation in order to maintain a cardiac output to keep the vital organs alive. Okay. So, in the first step, we have to assess the scene safety. But before that, you should know which are the patients that you are going to do. Three things we have to see. One, what is the level of consciousness of the patient? Second, whether the patient heart is pumping or not, whether we can feel pulse or not. And the third thing, that whether there is any breathing or not. These are the three things that you have to ensure in the victim. Okay. Then second is, first assess the scene safety. That means you have to assess that the environment is safe for you as well as for the patient. Suppose the patient suddenly collapsed in the middle of the road. What you are going to do? You have to bring the patient to the side of the road. Suppose the patient is electrocuted. If you touch, then you will also be electrocuted. So, first ensure your safety as well as the safety of the patient as well as the bystander. Okay? Am I clear to everyone? Second is, you have to check for responsiveness. How to check for responsiveness? You have to tap over the shoulder of the patient. You have to ask the patient, are you okay? What's your name? Can you hear me? Okay? At that time, you have to see whether the patient is opening his eyes or not, whether the chest is rising or not, whether there is any movement in any part of the body or not. Okay? So, these are the things that you have to check. That is the check for responsiveness. If you are getting that the patient is responsive, then there is no need to do CPR. If there is no responsiveness, then only we should move forward towards the rest of the steps. Okay? If the patient is unresponsive, then first of all, you have to ask for help. You have to shout for help. And if there is any bystander, you have to tell the bystander to contact any ambulance or emergency services. Okay? Next thing is, you have to check for circulation. How to check for circulation? Have you heard of the term pulse? Where do you normally see the pulse? Where do you palpate the pulse? At least any one of you can stand and answer me. Okay, so we'll be checking. Normally we check radial pulse, but at times of this, if the patient is not responsive, then you should check for carotid pulse. Why? Because if there is hypotension, you cannot feel the pulse radially. Okay, so we have to check for carotid pulse. Where to check for carotid pulse? Anyone? Palpate your trachea. You can palpate, right? Then you can feel the medial end of the sternocleidomastoid. There is a groove, right? So at the level of the cricoid cartilage, you have to feel for the pulse. Everyone feel your own pulses? Can you feel anything? So this is your carotid pulse. So during that incident, you have to check for the carotid pulse. Okay? Now how long you will check? Is it required to count the pulses at that time? No, because I have to feel that whether the pulse is palpable or not. No need to count. Next question is how long you will check for the pulse. How long? 5 to 10 seconds, but not more than 10 seconds. Okay. At that time, how can you check that you have calculated it for 5 to 10 seconds or not? Is there any method? So, you have to tell 1001, 1002, 1003 like that up to 1010 quickly. Okay. So, within that time period, you have to check for pulse. And during checking, you have to see whether the chest is rising or not. For what purpose? That whether the patient is breathing normally or not. Okay. If you are not getting any pulse, if the respiration pattern is abnormal, then you have to straight away start for CPR. Okay. How to do the CPR? We have to place the patient in a supine position on a firm and flat surface. We have to kneel down to the patient and locate the position for chest compression on the person's chest. Okay. Suppose this is a patient, okay, who is lying unconsciously, so that you will tap over the shoulder, just like that. Are you okay? Are you alright? What's your name? Can you hear me? Only 3 to 4 times you are going to do that. During that time, you have to check for eye responses, whether there is any movement of any part and whether the patient is breathing normally or not, or abnormal, whatever it is. Okay. If you then check for the carotid pulse, I told you how to do that. In this way, you are going to check for the radial pulse. And while doing that, you have to see the chest rise. Okay. If there is no pulse, no normal respiration, no normal breathing pattern, then you have to straight away start CPR. Now, what is the location of the CPR? Where to keep our hands? First of all, you just put your right hand like that. Then lock your fingers with that. Okay? Everyone do it? So, this should be your position of the hands. Elbows should not bend. The hands should be straight. Okay? Now, you have to give CPR with the help of this heel of the palm. Okay? So, where to place it? You can see there are 2 nipples over the chest. At the center, there is one bone. What's that known as? Sternum. So, lower 1/3 of the sternum is known as xiphoid process. So, 2 fingers over the xiphoid process. You will be going to place your hand over that area. Just like that. This should be your position while you are starting CPR. Am I clear? Then, how to give? The force should be from the shoulder, not from the elbow, not from the wrist, from the shoulder. Okay? The hands should be straight, just like that. Then you have to start giving compressions. Okay? Just like that. See? This is the way how you are going to give it. Okay? So, 30 compressions. You have to continue it for 30 compressions, and the depth of the compression should be around 5 to 6 centimeter, not more than that. And the rate should not be more than 100 to 120. Why? Why the rate should not be more than 120? Anyone? Because if you increase the rate, the chest will not be able to recoil to its position. What is our main purpose? It is to circulate the blood. So, after giving compression, there should be enough time for the chest to recoil. Then only we can get an efficient contraction. Okay? So, this is how you are going to do it. Deliver 30 chest compression, push hard, depth should be around 5 to 6 centimeter, and allow for chest recoil. Okay? Then after completing 30 compression, straight away you have to assess the airway. How to assess it? You have to open the mouth of the patient and see whether there is any foreign body or not. If any foreign body is there, then you have to remove the foreign body. Okay? After completing 30 compressions, next is to give 2 rescue breaths. There are several methods of giving rescue breath. One is mouth-to-mouth breathing. Second is by bag and mask ventilation, and via advanced airway. Now, mouth-to-mouth breathing. Suppose you are on the road and you don't have any bag and mask ventilation, you cannot give. So, in this condition, you can give mouth-to-mouth breathing. How to do that? You have to do head tilt and chin lift. Okay? Where it is done? It is done to straighten the airway. Then you have to pinch the nose of the patient. Then you have to seal your mouth over the mouth of the patient and give breath. How can you know that the process is effective or not? Yes, the chest will rise. If there is no obstruction, the chest should rise. That means that the rescue breaths are effective. Okay? So, you have to give rescue breath for 1 second. 2 such breaths are given. Okay? Then again you have to start the chest compression. 30:2. You have to continue it for 5 cycles. Okay? 5 cycles mean 2 minutes. And if you are having this bag and mask ventilation, then this is the mask everyone can see. It should be placed over the nose and this over the mouth part. Okay. Now you will place like that. There should not be any air leakage. Okay. And how to how to hold this mask? With the help of the 2 fingers, that is thumb and the index finger. You have to make a C. With the index and the thumb. Okay. Then with the rest of the fingers, you have to hold the mandible. Okay. So this should be your position. I hope everyone can see. So this is the E and the C position. Okay. Just look at the picture. This is the C and this is the E position. Next, you have to cover the nose and the mouth with the mask without extending it over the chin. Then each rescue breath should last approximately 1 second, and at that time you have to check for the chest rise. Okay. we have to perform 5 cycles of CPR. Then you have to reassess that whether the pulse is palpable or not. Okay? And you have to continue the resuscitation, these cycles continuously until the help arrives or the victim starts normally or the rescuer, that is you yourself, become exhausted. Okay? There is another device, that is the AED. If AED is there, abnormal, automated external defibrillator is there, then what you can do, you can give defibrillation shock. There are 2 leads, see. These are the 2 pads that are available with the AED device. These are placed over the chest like that, one in a vertical position and one in a horizontal position, over the right upper chest and the left subcostal area. Okay. After placing the pads, the AED is an automated device. It will give shocks on its own. You don't have to do anything. You just ensure that while it is giving shock, you should not touch the patient. So that means I clear, you clear, all clear. You should not touch the patient at that time. Okay? Then after giving shock, you have to resume the compressions immediately. If the patient starts to breathe normally, then you have to place the patient in a recovery position. That is, you have to place it in a left lateral position like that. Okay? So this is the way how you are going to provide the cardiopulmonary resuscitation. There are some special circumstances, like in case of pregnancy, you have to place the patient in the left lateral position, and you have to consider for perimortem C-section. If it is a drowning case, then you have to focus more on ventilation. If it is a trauma case, then first of all, you have to stabilize the C-spine. Okay? And if it is a hypothermia, then you have to do this CPR for a prolonged time. So this is an Indian Resuscitation Council adaptation. They are following the algorithm as circulation, airway and breathing. There is emphasis on early call for help and bystander CPR. They are training all the healthcare personnel and they are promoting the BLS awareness. After you resuscitate the patient, you have to give some post-resuscitation care. That is, you have to maintain the oxygenation and perfusion, treat the underlying cause, you have to maintain the temperature and the glucose control, and debriefing and recovery support for the patient as well as the rescuers. So at the end of this, there are some key takeaways. That is, you have to recognize early and act immediately. High quality compression save lives. Okay. So use AED if it is there and continue education. Thank you. Okay. So the pediatric part will be dealt by Dr. Nilanjan Majumdar.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I am Dr. Nilanjan Majumdar from Department of Pediatrics. Already Dr. Momana has beautifully explained about CPR in adults. So I will not go into details about anything. I will just point out the parts which are different in pediatrics. Okay, you know about pediatrics, right? It's about basically children. We are mainly concerned with children up to 18 years of age. So basically in small children, like before 1 year we call them as infants. Before 1 month we call them as neonates. And how we do CPR in those cases, we will deal about that only. Okay. So how do you identify cardiac arrest in children? Okay. So first is that whenever you see that a child or any person who is unconscious and is not responding, okay, or if anyone is not breathing properly or is gasping. Gasping means not adequate effort, respiratory effort, or if anyone doesn't have a pulse, okay, and Please remember, in pediatrics, we consider pulse has to be at least 60 beats per minute. If it is less than that, you need to start CPR at that time. So always we need to check if pulse is around at least 60 or more than that. Okay, so this part has already been dealt. So first what do? You ensure the scene safety. Whether everyone is safe or not, you just look into that and see, is there any danger to the person as well as yourself also. Look after yourself also. If there is any imminent danger, you need to look after that and you need to avoid that. And next, you check for whether the victim is responsive or not. If unresponsive, then shout for nearby help. And as my previous speaker already talked about AED and all, so that is the next step. When we won't be able to look for. So once we check for responsiveness, as my previous speakers told, you have to look, check in and tap in the shoulder and ask, are you okay or not? So in children, you just can't do that. You will see that the child is moving and all. If the child is moving, that means the child is responsive. Child will not answer back to you, right? So either the child will move something or moving all the limbs or not, and you can just assess by looking at the child only whether the child is responsive or not. So once you have checked for responsiveness, you check for breathing. So you need to tilt the head and the chin so that the airway is open. Okay. So what happens is that, as we know, we have to check for the carotid pulse in adults. But in pediatrics, what is different is that in children, you need to look for the brachial pulse or the femoral pulse. Okay, so how do we assess pulse? See, in infants, we look for mostly the brachial area. Okay, this is the part where we look for the brachial pulse. So in pediatrics, instead of checking for the carotid pulse, you need to check here the brachial pulse, mostly in infants, or the femoral pulse. Okay, here. In children, you can assess for the femoral pulse. So presence or its absence is checked in carotid area in adults. In children, the pulse is checked in femoral areas, and in infants, in brachial areas, as I said. And please remember, you cannot take more than 10 seconds while assessing this. Okay, you have to check this by 10 seconds and assess and go to the next step whenever you are seeing this. So once you have checked that, you have checked for breathing, you have checked for pulse. Now there are three options, right? Either the child can have a normal breathing and normal pulse, the child can have pulse but no breathing properly, or the child doesn't have any breathing or doesn't have any pulse. There are three options, right? So once you have normal breathing and the child has a pulse, then what do? You place the victim in recovery position. So this is the recovery position. You can see the slides, okay? So the child has to be in the left lateral position so that any secretions of mouth and all, they just go down. They just don't go into the airways. Okay, so you have to put the child in left lateral position and try to see that the child's knees are bent in such way so that the child goes back to prone position. So you need to see this. The child has to be in a left lateral position and the knees has to be bent so that the child doesn't go to the prone position. And the main idea is that the secretions has to go out. So secretions shouldn't come in the airway. So that is the position you give. If any secretions are getting collected here, it will just flow in this way. So once you have checked this, the next part of the thing, okay, if there is no normal breathing, but the child has pulse. So earlier we saw good like normal breathing and pulse, then we just put the child in recovery position. But now if the child has no normal breathing but has pulse, we give rescue breaths. Okay, that is rescue breaths. We already discussed in previous slides. So we give one breath every 2 to 3 seconds. So in 1 minute we will have 20 to 30 breaths. Okay, so that is what we do if there is no breathing but there is pulse. And once we don't have a pulse and also breathing, then we go for CPR. So we go for CPR if there is no pulse, no breathing. So the thing you need to remember in pediatrics is that the ratio of compression to ventilation is different. In children, remember the main cause of resuscitation, you need to remember is that the cause is mostly respiratory rather than cardiac. Okay, in adults the cause is mostly cardiac. In children the cause is mostly respiratory. So you need to support the respiratory system much more. So what we do is that after 15 compressions only we give 2 breaths. In adults, what we have seen, after 30 compressions we give 2 breaths. In pediatrics, after 15 compressions we give 2 breaths. Okay, because we need to support the respiratory system more in children. So once we do this, this is the way we start. Okay, and if there is shockable rhythm, then we go for AED. If it is not shockable, then we don't give a shock, we just continue CPR. So what is different in adults? First, as I said, the ratio of pulse is different. In adults, we look for carotid. In pediatrics, we look for brachial or femoral. And what is the next difference is that even if it is a single rescuer or double rescuer, we need to go for 15:2 ratio. Next, what is the compression technique? So compression technique is again different in children. So I will show it in the next slide. The depth is same, just like adults. We have to go at least 1/3 of the depth, but the technique is different. We can't use those 2-hand techniques just like adults in pediatrics. Okay, there is high chance of fracture of ribs. So what we do is that this is the way we give compression. If you are only one person, then you use your 2 fingers. Okay, and you can just do like this. Okay, this is about giving compression in small children, very neonates and infants. And this is one option. The second option is you can use your 2 hands and encircle it like this. You can encircle the 2 thumbs of your and do like this. See, it has to be encircled and then give like this. Okay, I am showing it you here, but you have to do it here. Always remember, it has to be in a firm surface. Only then you will be able to give proper compression. So there are 2 options. In adults, you can use 2 hands, but in children, either you can use your 2 fingers or you can use your 2 thumbs. So that is one of the very important difference in pediatrics and adults. The next thing is depth is same. The ventilation compression ratio is different, as I already mentioned. Okay. The next thing is about switching yourself. Okay. Remember, CPR is very tough. CPR, you will be very tired once you have started doing CPR. So we always recommend switch between the rescuers. Like if someone is in that end and I am in the head end, just finish 2 cycles within 2 minutes. You just switch over. The person who is giving breaths has to go to the compression part, and the person who is doing the chest compression can come here. So we say every 10 cycles you can switch, or 2 minutes or sooner, whenever you are fatigued. The main thing is you cannot be tired at that time, because you are giving compressions, right? It's very tiring. So you need to switch. So that is about CPR, the basic difference in pediatrics and in adults. The one more part what we get different in pediatrics is about choking. Choking is very common in children. Choking means like whenever any part of object is like the child mistakenly swallows, then it might get into the airways. Okay, so that can cause choking. So what do we do? So if the child is more than 1 year, it is same as adults. You do the Heimlich's maneuver. You know about Heimlich's maneuver? Okay. So you just need to go behind, put your arms like this and give a upward thrust. So that is Heimlich's maneuver. So that is given for anyone who is more than 1 year. So any child more than 1 year or any adult, you just go behind, put your thumbs properly, like the thumb fist has to be well below the breastbone and above the belly button, and you grasp with the other hand and give upward thrust. So that is about Heimlich maneuver. and you need to give thrust until the foreign body comes out or the victim starts coughing. Okay, so that is about Heimlich maneuver you give to any children above 1 year. What about below 1 year? In that case, we need to give back slaps alternatively with chest thrust. So that is chest thrust and this is back slaps. So what is back slaps? So if the child, suppose the child is an infant less than 1 year and you have suddenly seen that the child is not breathing or the child is not responding. So what do you do in that case? So this is back slaps where you put the child, either you can sit in one place or you can just kneel down. Okay, because the main thing is you need to have a support for the child. So either you can do like this, you can keep the infant like this and you give back slaps in between the scapula. Okay, I will just show, just see once. So you hold the child's chin like this. You can hold in with your 2 fingers and you can just keep the baby here, okay, in your thighs so that there is a support, and then you give 5 back slaps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So once you have given 5 back slaps, you need to change the position of the baby to the alternate side. Okay, this is prone position. So you shift the baby to the alternate side. Now the chest is up. So you give chest thrust there. How do you give chest thrust? Again with the 2 finger technique. Okay, so we put here and we give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so chest thrust. If you see that the child is not breathing, just repeat the cycles again and again. Again you move back here, give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back slaps. Again go back and give chest thrust 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until the foreign bodies come out or the child starts coughing. Okay, you understood, right? So this is the way we give chest thrust and back slaps. So the procedure is written here. You can just go through that. Once I have just shown the procedure, you can just go through the theory part. So that is about back slaps and this is about chest thrust, and it should be provided 5-5 and you keep on doing this until the foreign body comes out. So what not to do in choking? Don't panic. Don't intervene when the victim is coughing. Remember, cough is a protective reflex, right? Once anyone coughs, it means the child will take out the foreign body. Don't intervene if the child is coughing or anyone is coughing. Don't perform blind finger sweep. If you are not seeing the foreign body inside, you don't do anything blindly. Otherwise, it will just lodge the foreign body more deeper. So if you see only, then you put a sweep. Otherwise, you don't touch it. And if the victim becomes unresponsive, stop efforts to dislodge the foreign body and begin CPR. So how do we prevent choking in children? In children, mostly the thing is food. So we cut food into small manageable pieces, give hard foods to young children under parental supervision, keep small objects out of children's reach, and teach children how to chew food properly before swallowing. What are the common items that can cause choking? Most important, what we get is this nuts and seeds. Okay, this is very commonly given to children who are still not old. Their parents often give like whole nuts and seeds, and child can choke in that. So please remember, always tell them to give a mixture, or they can be powdered and then can be given to the child once the child starts taking. Coins is another thing. Peanuts, as I said. Popcorn is another thing which can happen, and of course candies. Okay, so that finishes the pediatric part.